On today's episode of Recliner Reviews, we're talking about another all-time great comedy, one of my favorite movies of all time. That movie is
Airplane. Never has the screen been so big.
You ever been in a cockpit before?
No, sir, I've never been up in a plane before.
Peter Graves.
You ever seen a grown man naked?
This is this mental list that I have of five, probably, I think the five hardest I've ever laughed in my life. I can remember the times, the hardest laughs in my entire life. Most recent was this TikTok, which I'm kind of embarrassed to say, where we'll put it up. So this girl is singing along to the song Tequila, which is, has one lyric in it. And then at the end, instead of saying tequila, she says barbecue sauce.
Barbecue sauce.
It sounds stupid when I explain it, but it's the hardest, one of the hardest I've laughed in recent memory. Another time that sticks out as one of the hardest I've laughed in my entire life was when Too Many Cooks came out. Did you watch Too Many Cooks?
I did watch Too Many Cooks.
I watched Too Many Cooks with my buddy Chris at like 4 in the morning or something crazy.
Wasn't that when they released it at 4 in the morning, right?
Yeah, a couple hours, so it must have been the next morning. A couple hours after it came out, it had a couple thousand views on YouTube. We watched it, I laughed my ass off. It was wheezing, and then by the end of the day, it had like 3 million views. That makes my laugh Hall of Fame. Another one is my friend Claire. Claire, if you're watching, told me a joke. I can't even redo the joke. It's the tap dancing cookie joke. I need to try to figure out a way to put that clip in here. Laughed so hard I almost broke my computer because I threw it on the floor. And then, I'm not listening to anything my laugh Hall of one time a couple of friends and I were sending each other Curious George memes. So it has like the book of Curious George, and it's like, instead of something, it's like Curious George goes to the zoo. It's like Curious George is trying to save a chick from ODing. And I threw up on myself because I was laughing so hard. Airplane is in my laugh Hall of Fame. The first time I saw it, now I could still like wheeze at it, I'm sure. But the first time I ever saw Airplane was not very old. It's probably like 11 or something. The hardest up until that point in my life that I think I laughed.
Well, it works because the humor is like childish humor where an 11-year-old can laugh at it and be like, this is hilarious,
but a
right?
30-year-old
But a 30-year-old from a different angle, right?
Yes.
Like, because there's a different meaning to some of these jokes. We used to watch Airplane fairly regularly when I was growing up, just because of how ridiculous the movie is. And a lot of people think it's the first from this style. It's from 1980, but I think this style, I mean, of course the fact checkers are going to correct me when I'm saying this wrong, but I think that Top Secret was actually before this. And that's another movie we have to do because, have you seen Top Secret?
Mm-hmm. Been a minute, but yeah.
Same humor.
Yeah.
Same thing, just a different storyline, right? It sparked this whole trend of movies in this style.
Which didn't last in perpetuity, though.
No, of course not.
Right, but I was thinking about this when we were reviewing Blazing Saddles. The satire kind of like, and not that this is necessarily like a satire in the same sense of Blazing Saddles, but it is kind of satirizing the entire aspect of flying and being in an airport and stuff. Like it has like, I don't want to call it a parody because it's not a parody of anything, but it's just
it is a parody.
It's taking the extreme.
It is a parody. Like there's an actual movie that a lot of the lines from this movie are taken almost word for word.
Oh, okay.
And in fact, and of course, like, I think about these things and then I don't write them down. So fact checker, throw up the name of the movie. You can throw it up right now. But people say that they can't watch that movie anymore.
What movie is it? I've heard this before, but it's not like a full-on parody, right?
It's pretty much a full-on parody. And again, I can't remember the name of the movie. That's why they're going to put it up. Right here is going to, bing, there's the name of the movie.
Top Gun.
It's not Top Gun. But like a lot of the lines, like,
can you fly this airplane and land it?
No, not a chance.
Can you fly this plane and land it?
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
And there's a line about, we need a pilot, and we need a pilot who hasn't eaten the fish.
Yeah.
Like, comes from this movie, and like all of these things. So
Well, it's okay. So let me backtrack. It's kind of a parody in the same sense that Spaceballs is grabbed from other, like, several different movies.
Well, I think they use the base of this one movie, and like that's the baseline of the story and everything, right? And I think even in that movie, the lead character is Ted Stryker, or
Yeah.
I know in Airplane it's Ted Stryker, but I think in the other movie
okay.
it's Ted Stryker or something like Ted Stryker, like very close. So it's like, again, that's the base, and then they kind of build off of that, right? Like, so like that's the base of the mountain, and then the jokes kind of come from there.
But so Spaceballs came out around roughly the same
Yeah.
time, and that's probably falling into what you said about this trend of these kinds of movies. It's like a very similar type of humor.
Yeah.
You don't really see a lot of those kinds of movies, parodies, in the last like 10 years, but the ones that are the most recent were the early 2000s. Scary Movie, Not Another Teen Movie, Scary Movie 2, Scary Movie 3, 4. Those, we could talk about those another time, but I just don't understand why those don't hit the mark the same way. They're not smart.
Because they're not smart.
But I don't know what was lost over 20 years that this satire
The joke
became
writing,
stupid.
like it became like, for example, in this movie, right? Going back to the other movie, there's a line in the other movie that's "I picked the wrong day to stop smoking," right? In this, it's "I picked the wrong day to stop sniffing glue."
I picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
It's something like that, right?
that
Like
line.
that line, like "I picked the wrong day to stop sniffing glue." Like that's hilarious.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I feel like with Scary Movie or one of those types of movies, the joke would have been like, "Oh, I got my finger in my butt," or like some like stupid ass joke.
Can you fly this plane and land it?
Surely you can't be serious.
"Oh, I got my finger in my butt." It's infantile humor. Like we're gonna resort to the lowest common denominator on the comedy scale. And there's a place for that. Don't get me wrong. Like, I like dumb humor sometimes. But there's a difference between dumb humor and a satire like this, where the jokes may seem dumb, but they're not dumb.
Right.
As opposed to the jokes may seem dumb and they are dumb.
Right.
And I feel like the satires and comedies of the early 2000s go to that lowest common denominator, as opposed to this and Spaceballs and a lot of the other types of parodies from this time where they don't.
There's also something, and it would take forever to dig into the reasons why, where different eras, different years just bred better comedy. And it's probably a million different variables that go into that. It's like how there's different talent in like the NBA or NFL or whatever at different times. It's like the leagues are deeper or thinner at different times.
Is this the old Michael Jordan versus LeBron argument?
Well, no. I'm actually thinking about that in my head right now. But the comedy from 2000 to 2007 or something makes me think immediately of Dane Cook. It makes me think of Scary Movie, Not Another Teen Movie. I've joked before on this podcast that Hitch is one of the greatest comedies of all time.
That's where I come in.
It's amazing that it came out in 2006, five or six. Two of the unfunniest. I just think of those years and I think of crap. Oh, crap! But then during those times too, there were great TV shows. We talked about how we love Reno 911. That was huge back then.
Yeah.
So just like the mediums, I guess, are different. But the comedy movies of the early 2000s, in my head, and I'm sure I'm generalizing because I could probably pick out a few that I like, but there's a span there where I think it's all fucking shit.
Yeah.
And I think it's no coincidence that in the 80s, you and I talk about how many of these movies, Blues Brothers, going back a little bit further, but Blazing Saddles, Spaceballs, like they're still our favorites.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like you talk about a lot of like what's on your top 10 list, right?
There's at least 37 movies on my top 10 list.
For me, it pretty much lives in the 80s. Comedies in the 80s, like that's the pinnacle for me. This falls into it. A different type of humor than some of the other ones, like Coming to America or Trading Places, but still same type of thing. Like this is where the comedy lives. So,
and another thing that you like is quotable stuff, and this movie is top 10.
Yep.
Quotable. You already said the sniffing glue line. The line the girl says about how she takes her coffee.
Cream? No, thank you. I take it black. Like my man.
I need a pilot. My favorite not really a line, but one of my favorite cameos in any movie is Kareem.
Yeah. Oh, so I have a whole thing about Kareem. He apparently was not acting when he grabbed the little kid, because the little kid was like, "My dad said that you blew it in the game 5 of the finals or whatever." He was not acting. Like, he was really pissed off and grabbed the kid like really, really hard. The kid cried. The kid cried because Kareem was such a dick.
Have you watched the new show on HBO, Winning Time, about the Lakers in the 80s?
No.
I think in the first episode they showed that scene.
Do you think maybe we could take a picture?
Fuck off, kid.
They showed him making the kid cry.
I mean, it goes to a whole thing about like asshole sports stories.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm sure that you have interactions, right, where you're like, you're a real asshole, right? I mean, I have an interaction where, so I was in grade school, and I was visiting my sister at Notre Dame. She was in college at the time. I feel like she was maybe a sophomore or a junior or something like that. And it was siblings weekend. So I took the train down. I took the South Shore line down, and she met me, and we went, and they had all of these things. They had like a comedy show, they had like a talent show, like all of these different events, right? So we go to this talent show, and the host of the talent show is Jerome Bettis.
Oh.
He's only a few years removed from being a football player at the University of Notre Dame. He's in the NFL, but he's the head of he's the MC. Oh no, I take it back. Jerome Bettis was there. He was one of the ones that was there. I think he's 1 year removed. Rocket Ishmael,
Okay.
from now who is several years removed, was the MC. And I'm like starry-eyed as this, as a grade school kid, played football, like all of these really good football players. And at that time, Notre Dame had a good football team, 93, that I think that they almost won the national championship or whatever. If they didn't lose to Boston College, they probably would have. But like, I'm going up and I'm like, can I have your autograph? Like, to all of these football players. And a bunch of them were like so super cool. Like, Jerome Bettis was super cool. Like, he signed it, and apparently he's a really cool guy. Like, a lot of people say he's like really cool guy, really nice guy. Rocket Ishmael. Now I go up, so he's standing by the stage. This is probably about 10 minutes before the show is supposed to start. And like, I go up to him and I'm like, Rocket, you're so awesome. I've got your jersey at home. Like, I love watching you. You're awesome. Can I have your autograph, please? And he's like, find me at the after party, kid. And that was it. And I'm like, okay. And just went and sulked back to my seat. I'm like, you're a real dick. Like, how long does it take to sign your fucking name on a fucking piece of paper? Like, hi, I'm Rocket Ishmael. There you go, kid. Blah, blah, blah. Go, do
now
your thing.
You remember that 30 years later.
Yeah.
I've held a grudge with former Chicago Cubs pitcher and current marquee sports analyst Ryan Dempster for 14 years now. In spring training of 2008, he was leaving the locker room, a bunch of fans out there, but I was able to somehow get to him, and no one else was around him. He was walking with a small entourage, which, for being a mediocre closing pitcher and a mediocre starting pitcher, I don't know why you have an entourage, but whatever. He's walking out, and there's no one else by us, and we're walking in the parking lot, and I'm right behind him, and I have a ball and a Sharpie, and I say, hey, Ryan, can I get your autograph? And loud enough to hear. I'm standing right behind him. He's walking and said, hey, Ryan, can I get your autograph? Do you have Mr. Dempster? Hey, Ryan? And one of his friends had to apologize, and it was like sorry, he's trying to find his wife or whatever. And then finally, Dempster turns around, doesn't say anything to me, takes it, it's almost kind of aggressively puts it back in my hand and walks away. And to this day, Ryan Dempster, if you're watching this, you're local, you live in Chicago, I live in Chicago, I have not forgiven him for it. And every time he's on TV, I want his stupid fucking face off the television.
Yeah. I mean, look, and this goes to Rocket Ishmael, too. Rocket Ishmael,
Yeah,
you want to make it up to us, Ryan Dempster, you want to come on the pod, you want to talk, let's make it up to us. But, I'm sure think of all the people that have asshole sports stories.
And the thing is, if they just did the one little thing,
right,
we wouldn't remember this.
And it's the smallest little thing, right? And to it's a kid. It's not like you're an autograph hound, right? You're not what's the name of the guy that looks for the baseballs? that like the home run balls. Like
outside Wrigley?
no, like he goes around the nation.
That's
and like
weird.
he's a grown ass man, and like he like wrestles balls away from kids, and like collects, and he's got like thousands of balls, and like even like the like warm up balls too. He's like like calling out for him, like grown ass man, like real weird. But like it's something like that. Like how difficult is it for like you make a kid happy? Like it doesn't take you that long to make a kid happy. Like I'll sign your autograph. Great. Okay. Have a good one, kid. Like that's not a difficult thing. But I digress. Back to Kareem. Did you know that Kareem was actually supposed to be played by Pete Rose?
No.
Yeah, so
That would have been hilarious.
they were supposed to have Pete Rose, but because baseball was going on at the time, he was playing.
Oh, that's
and
funny.
so Kareem was offered $30,000 for this role, and he demanded $35,000 because he wanted to buy an Oriental rug. So he bought an Oriental rug with his airplane money.
It's so funny because he's the cameo doesn't almost I would say like half the jokes in this movie have nothing to do with the plot. They're like one-offs, and his is such a one-off, and especially as a cameo, it's irrelevant. And it's not a cameo directly as himself. It's him pretending not to be himself, sort of.
Wait a minute. I know you. You're Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
I'm sorry, son, but you must have me confused with someone else. My name is Roger Murdoch. I'm the co-pilot.
Yeah.
And this is my favorite. I don't know. I love his cameo in the movie, and he reprised this role in a commercial, a tourism ad for Wisconsin.
How fun does that look?
Those snowmobiles are flying.
Which I think is funny because he asked to be traded from the Bucks to the Lakers, and now he's doing tourism ads for Wisconsin. Like you didn't even want to be there.
Yeah.
Okay.
There were a couple of lines I think that they had to tweak on this, and you know where the main pilot's like, Billy.
You ever seen a grown man naked?
He's like
I love that.
all of those lines, like things like that. There was actually one line that they actually had to cut because it was written too blue.
Why are you blue?
And he just flat out asked him, Billy, have you ever sucked a man's cock? And they had to cut it because it was just too much.
That's so funny.
Like, that changes everything. Like, the innuendo is what makes it funny.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, okay, but I think if it built to that, if it's like the innuendo keeps getting less and less subtle, and then that's the finale.
yeah.
I think that's hilarious.
That could work, but like they had to cut it. There were a couple of other things that were like little things. So at the beginning of the movie where they are at the airport and you have the voiceover from like the airport talking about the red zone and the white zone.
Don't tell me which zone is for stopping and which zone is for loading.
Listen, Betty, don't start up with your white zone shit again.
Those were actually made by real voiceover artists who had done the voiceover work
You can kinda tell.
for LAX.
Oh,
For the
that's
white
great.
zone and the red zone, where they're fighting with each other about the what is the white zone, what is the red zone, and they're actually married in real life, or were married in
that's
real
cute.
life. But like, those are little things like you find out about. You're like, oh, that's pretty clever. Like that's a funny thing to do, right?
Yeah.
There was only one airline that actually bought this movie to play on the airplane.
Is it? Wait,
So like
oh,
back in the day, right? Like they didn't have this on-demand system where like they
Yeah.
had like 30 movies that you could pick from,
Which,
right?
by the way, I don't know if you've watched a movie on an airplane recently. Some of the movies they offer, it feels like they shouldn't offer on an airplane where there are kids that could be next to you.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I want to dive into that too, because like, have you ever had an instance on an airplane where, like, you're sitting in your seat and you notice somebody doing something that they should not be doing? So like, I mean, I tell you, for me, right? I get on an airplane, I put my headphones on, like I dive into either if I'm reading a book, I'm reading that book,
Yeah.
and I've got the headphones on, so like people won't bother me,
Same.
right? The only person I want to bother me is when the flight attendant comes down and is like, "Do you want some water, or
Yeah.
do you want a pop, or do you want whatever?" Right? Like, that's the only person I want bothering me. I don't want anybody else bothering me. Like, I just want to just get from point A to point B. Have you ever had an instance where like there's somebody who's got their iPad and they're watching porn, and you're like, dude, you should not be watching that. Like, you should not be watching that on the airplane.
I have not had that, but one time I was watching a movie that United offered on demand. I don't even remember what the movie was, and because I stopped playing it. But it was a movie they offered, and I was playing it through my laptop because
Yeah.
it's like through the app or whatever. in the opening scenes, there's like a kind of like a sex scene sort of, and my headphones weren't working, and it just like blared out. But that's United's fault for offering the movie.
Yeah, well, I mean, for sure. Like, you get some of these movies, right? I think, like, at one point, they offered Old School.
And
it's like, how do you get away with, like, I'm sitting here, right, and I've got a kid sitting across the aisle, and here we are with the KY jelly wrestling with, like, tits hanging out, and this poor little impressionable kid, like, is sitting right there.
It's odd.
You gotta, like, close the laptop, like, or turn off the iPad and be like, okay, we're going to watch this maybe later or not.
We're actually hitting on something, though, that, and I want to get back to the point about the one airline that offered the movie. This is an aside. The reason, a huge reason why this is funny is airplane humor. It's cliche now. It's like, what? Like the Seinfeld, like, what's the deal with airline food? But the reason so many comedians and comedies would have airline jokes is that it's extremely relatable. You fly once in your life and you can relate to all the struggles in an airport and on an airline. So it's cliche now, but that's the reason that I come up with a new joke about flying every time I fly, or a new experience that's bananas. Like last week, sometimes I just like to doze off a little bit, even if I'm not like super tired. I can fall asleep on a plane, and I don't like to drink the free drinks on the plane because I don't want to have to go to the bathroom that often. And so when the drink cart comes, I just kind of like rest my eyes with my headphones in. That way they don't ask. If they see that you're sleeping, they don't ask. I was doing that, and I was actually dozing off a little bit, and the stranger next to me nudged me awake and said, "Do you want anything?" And I was like, "This is insane."
Take a cue, dude.
Yeah.
Like,
but you come away with something like that every flight.
Yeah, for sure.
That's why well, back to the airline thing.
Yeah, back to the airline. So,
is it an airline that still exists?
I don't know.
Okay.
To be honest with you, but it's Aeromexico.
It does exist.
Seguimos y seguiremos volando.
Aeromexico was the only airline to buy this movie, and I guess that kind of makes sense, right? Because like, you don't want passengers watching a potential disaster, airline disaster, right? Like, it's not like, oh, I'm gonna go on, I'm flying United over the mountains, and I'm gonna watch a live. Like, I want to watch this plane that crashes, and the soccer players have to eat each other because they've got no food. Did I just spoil a live for you? Sorry, spoiler alert.
I'm not going to say it. It's fine.
Okay. It's about this airplane that crashes in the Andes with the soccer team, and they got to, like, eat each other.
Yeah, it sounds, I'm not going to watch that.
Yeah. It's not funny.
Not funny!
It doesn't sound funny at
all. But, I mean, that makes sense, right? Like, you don't want somebody to watch a movie about a potential disaster involving the thing that you're sitting in.
You're just going to have Old School, and I watched Dunkirk on a plane once. You're going to have, like, they're not selective unless it involves an airplane. In the movie.
Yeah. So then the only other things that I have is that there wasn't any real improv in this movie. It's pretty much all scripted.
It's kind of surprising, actually.
Which, yeah, I mean, most people think it's improv, but it's not. But the takeaway that I love is that for all of the different languages that this is dubbed into or filmed into, for the jive scene, where they have the two guys, like, and the lady goes, "Well, I speak jive."
Yeah,
and like,
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Cuddy say can't hang.
Oh, stewardess, I speak jive. Oh, good.
Every language picked a specific dialect of that language to dub it into. So like in Germany, I think it's Bavarian, right? They dubbed it into Bavarian because they like, and the Germans loved it because there was no possible way two black men would be speaking the Bavarian language. And so the Germans thought it was hilarious. And like with the Italians, they did it Neapolitan, like that dialect. And so like they did little things like that for every language they dubbed it into that they would think it was hilarious. Back to the, have you ever been to a Turkish prison, Billy? The Turks and the Greeks, I don't know if you know this, the Turks and the Greeks hate each other. Like, they really don't like each other. I don't think they've had any real interaction, but like, you find a Greek American and you start talking about Turkey with them, oh, they do not like that. Do not like that one bit. The Turks, in the dubbed language, actually changed it to be, have you ever been to a Greek prison, Billy?
That's so
because they're like, we're not putting Turkish in there. Like, you're not in a Turkish prison.
But the Turkish prison line is so iconic.
Yeah.
Of the sequence of questions he asked him, that's the one that always stands out the most.
Yeah.
You've been to a Turkish prison.
I mean, there are so many lines like that that are just throwaway.
It's a big
Get me up to
collection of
date.
them.
Well, and then the Arabs came and they bought Mercedes Benzes. Like,
for the most part, it's a collection of. 'Cause I guess in a way, I'm not surprised that it's not improv because the script is a lot of tight jokes.
Yeah.
Set up
I mean,
punch.
this comes on the heels of the Kentucky Fried Movie, which is another one that we should do, where it's, again, there's kind of like vignettes, right? Like that, there is a storyline, there is an overarching storyline, but there are like little vignettes that go throughout this movie. It's great. Like, you could put it on right now and like watch it.
I would laugh, not as hard as I did when I entered my Laugh Hall of Fame, but I would still laugh hard even though I've seen it 15 times.
Yeah.
We said this about a couple other movies. It works, again, because it being in one setting, I think, is always a powerful device.
Yeah.
For the most part, it's in one exact setting.
Yeah.
And you're in this little world with them, and it's close to being a. There are some people that think it's too dumb.
I can see that. I mean, I get it. I don't agree, but I get it.
Yeah. So if you're ready, I'll give my
Yeah,
score.
go ahead.
Based
Give
off
your
that.
score.
I think there are some people that think it's. I mean, it's universally thought of as an all-timer, but I think I'm gonna go like 7-4.
7-4. I think that people have fond memories of this movie, and even the people who are seeing it for the first time appreciate that humor. And it's exactly like we were talking about with folks who get on an airplane. And it's like I get that.
Yeah.
They don't get the food thing now because there's no food on airplanes other
Right.
than like the stuff
First
you're bringing
class.
yourself.
Yeah.
But
There's an airplane too, by the way, we didn't mention.
yes, where they go to outer space.
Yeah.
It's the same jokes over again, but they go to outer space.
Yeah.
You know? So, again, another reason why they should not make sequels. I'm going to say 7-6.
Okay.
7-7.
Ooh.
Wow.
Good.
All right. That's good. I mean, like I said, I think people love this movie. I think that they go back to it even. So, yeah.
Sweet.